We like today to learn about the laws of those that are traveling to Eretz Israel and they're going through the mountains of Yehuda, Yerushalayim, and the Kotel. There are certain times that a person is required to rip his shirt, his clothing, and sometimes he has to say certain things that Chazal required us to say, all brought down in the Halacha in Siman Tafkuf Samech Aleph. Let's start from the very first Halacha, which speaks about the mountain of Judah, the mountains of Yehuda. It says, הרואה את ערי יהודה, בחורבנן, אומר הרי קודשה חיו מדבר וקורע. So over here, when a person travels through these places, since they are not built, he rips his clothing and he says, הרי קודשה חיו מדבר. The poskim of our generation say that one is not required to rip for הרי יהודה for two reasons. One reason is because we're not sure where those mountains really are. We are not sure which are the mountains that Chazal required us to rip over. And secondly, not necessarily that they are not built anymore today. Could be that those places are considered in a place that was rebuilt. And this is how Chacham Ovadia brings down Halacha Lemaaseh, that since those places are firstly not known exactly at the location, we're not sure, and secondly because they are today in the rulership of the Jewish government and not anymore the Goyim government, and therefore for those reasons one doesn't need to rip over Arei Yehuda. But then it says also in the Halacha that over Arei Yerushalayim you should also rip. It says Arei Yerushalayim b'churbanah omer ציון הייתה מדבר שממה וקורע. Over here, when a person goes to Yerushalayim, you should say that. And really, there are poskim that require ripping his shirt, his clothing, when he gets to the old city, to the gates of the old city. And when he does that, he needs to do it, as we'll see soon, standing. Kriya needs to be done, ripping the clothing needs to be done standing. And on the right side, so when one drives, for example, a car, he should get out of the car, rip, and say those words, Tzion hayta midbar shemama. Even those, some say that don't require ripping. This is how the Chacham Ovadia brings down Halacha Lemaaseh as well, for the reasons we explained before, but that is specifically for Arei Yehuda and Arei Yerushalayim. There is a machloket over Arei Yehuda as well. Some say that one is required to rip, and this is opinion of Rav Moshe Feinstein. He brings down in the Igrot Moshe, and some say that in Arei Yerushalayim as well there is a machloket whether one needs to rip or not. One that wants to be machmir, he should do that. There's no bracha, there's just ripping, and then after he ripped his clothing, he can change into a different shirt, which is not ripped. It's only a mitzvah to rip the shirt while he sees those places, and then right away he can change into a regular shirt. So for that, it's recommended to take an old shirt. One should keep his old shirts, and when he goes to those places that he knows he's going to need to rip, he rips them the way we explained before and change right away. Woman also is required to rip. And the way the woman does it is obviously with much tzniut. She needs to do it in a way that nobody sees. And right afterwards, also in a place that tzanua, either change the clothing or cover and put something over the shirt that is ripped. Or if she doesn't mind, she can just put pins and walk like that in Yerushalayim. One that feels uncomfortable walking with a ripped shirt, as we just explained before, he could either change his clothing or put something over that. The next thing is something that's much more common, and that is when a person gets close to the Beit HaMikdash, where it was standing, and where the Kotel is, and when he sees either the Kotel or where he sees the place of the Muslims, the place over there, he also needs to rip. And that's what it says here. כשרואה בית המקדש אומר בית קודשנו ותפארתנו אשר היללו בו אבותינו היה לשרפת אש וכל מחמדנו היה לחורבה וקורע. So one needs to have those things that he needs to say handy. he needs to prepare that before he goes, in order that as soon as he sees either the gold dome over there of the Arabs or the Kotel itself, right away he knows what to say. He has it handy with him, and also he needs to reap as soon as he says that. מהיכן חייב לקרוע? מן הצופים, ואחר כן כשיראה המקדש קורע קרע אחר. So the way we explained before, one that wants to reap and take that more strict opinion that when he goes into the gates of the old city, he reaps, that's one time, and then he reaps another time when on the same side of the shirt, but it needs to be 3 fingers away, one ripping from the other, or if you change the shirt, so a different shirt. One that wants to be machmir also in order to rip by the gates of the old city could be lenient, closing his eyes at the time he gets there in order not to see that, and when he gets to the Kotel, he reaps only one time. This is how some of the Gdolim actually did halacha lemaaseh. Those that want to take the more lenient opinion, they don't have to reap until they get to the Kotel or they see the gold dome of the Arabs. Once they see that, they need to reap. So over here, this is the halacha, and this halacha is, as we explained, is for men and women. Children don't rip. There's no avelut for children, so they don't need to do that. Also, one is required to do that whether it's a weekday or Erev Shabbat. Moshe Feinstein writes about this. He says he doesn't know where this leniency of some people that after midday chatzot of Erev Shabbat they don't rip. He says לעניין אם ראה מקום המקדש בערב שבת קודש אחר חצות איני רואה טעם שלא יקרא. This is also how many of the poskim speak. The Chazon Ish was very strict. He said those that don't rip Erev Shabbat on Friday, he doesn't know where it comes from, and definitely they do wrong. Im lo shenema, he wants to say that maybe one wants to think that maybe the ripping would cause him so much tzar, so much anguish, so much sadness that he would get into Shabbat being sad, which is not allowed. But the Maaseh says that's not an excuse, and one needs to rip his clothing even if he goes there after Chatzot. Same thing would be if he goes to the Kotel Motzei Shabbat or Rosh Chodesh or any other time except Chol HaMoed, which then he doesn't rip. There are those that wants to manipulate the system, so to speak, and they sell their shirt to their friend. And then once they sell it to their friend before they go to the Kotel, it's not their shirt anymore, so they're not allowed to rip it. The poskim say that this is wrong. It's a harama that doesn't help. It's such manipulation that doesn't help in any way. This is how many of the poskim say, and they write not to do that. The Or Letzion and Rav Steinbuch and Chacham Ovadia and Rav Eliashiv and so many other poskim as well, saying that this is wrong and one shouldn't use such thing in order to exempt himself from ripping his shirt. Definitely doesn't help, because a person that sells in such a way doesn't really mean to sell the shirt, and the other person can't use the shirt. The buyer of the shirt didn't actually practice real buy that he could do something with that shirt, and therefore one is required, and also it's not correct. It's not the right way to just find ways to be exempt from ripping the shirt. So therefore one should rip his own shirt when he gets to the Kotel, when he sees the Kotel, as soon as he gets there. So this is the halacha when we're dealing with the Kotel. Very interesting, I saw in the Rishon LeZion, Rav Yitzchak Yosef, that he brings also to rip when a person sees Gush Katif, places that the Jews over there were thrown away from. They were exiled from their houses, and therefore he says such places needs to be ripped. And also he speaks about Gaza. He says that over there, if one goes to such a place, obviously it's dangerous, one shouldn't go there. Whether he flies through a helicopter, sees those places, or let's say a soldier that goes there, doesn't need to rip in any way. Also, when a person goes to Kever Rachel, to the place of burial of Rachel Imenu, doesn't need to rip. So those are different places that he spoke about. If one didn't rip, he forgot to rip, he didn't rip for any reason, he gets home, Rav Moshe Feinstein says, and also Hamordia says, that he doesn't need to rip then, it's too late. When a person rips, the Bach says to say the bracha also of Dayan Ha'emet. Without Shem U'Malchut, some say without Shem U'Malchut, but majority of the poskim hold that it's not required to say so. So just what we explained over here, the wording that the Shulchan Aruch says, Bet Kodshenu v'Tifartenu asher illucha bo avotenu היה לשרפת אש וכל מחמדנו היה לחורבה. This is how it should be done. If a person goes to visit the Kotel more than one time, so then there's a difference between if he went there within the last 30 days, he doesn't rip again. But if he wasn't there for 30 days, he needs to rip again. One that lives in Yerushalayim, the minhag is not to rip over there. Why? Because they are very close by. Many times they go to visit occasionally, and even if not, since they are very close, so therefore going back and forth is not required. Just the fact that they are close, it already takes away the requirement from ripping and saying those words that we just explained. This summarizes what a person needs to do when he gets to Yerushalayim. But just to mention again, the ripping is on the left side, is just the shirt. Also, although the Shulchan Aruch says that he needs to rip Acher Galeh Libo, which means he rips all his clothing, whether he's wearing a jacket, a shirt, a t-shirt, and so on. He wears a sweater. But Lemaise, La'alacha, the minhag is not to do that. And the minhag is just to rip the shirt itself, not the jacket and not the undershirt, just the shirt itself, only a size of a tefach, although the Shulchan Aruch says that he needs to be ripped with his own hands and not using scissors or anything like that. The minhag is to be mekel in that as well. The Yalkut Yosef wants to say that although we usually follow the opinion of the Shulchan Aruch, but since Shulchan Aruch himself over here seems to contradict his words, because in Seif Aleph he says that kol Kriya tefach, the Kriya should be a size of a tefach, and then in Seif Daled he says korea kol ksuto shalav ad shegaleh et libo, which means it seems to indicate that it's more than that, than tefach. So therefore he says the minhag would dictate over here the one just needs to rip a tefach, and he can do it with a keli as well, with scissors or something else, and just the shirt itself on the left side. Do it while you're standing. So again, if a person is driving in a bus, he can do it in a bus while he's standing. If a person is driving in a car, he should stop and do it wherever he is.